Accommodate folks as they arrive. So, welcome to the fifth the fifth installment of Restoration of My Voice. Now, the fifth installment of Bullwinkle's Corner, and it is called Bullwinkle's Corner because I have been obsessed with moose ever since a young age, and this is one of my idols here, Mr. Know-It-All. And I wanted to begin today with an appropriate poem read by Mr. Know-It-All. So if you'll excuse me for just a second.
And here, with his bird's eye view and a brain to match, is Mr. Know-It-All.
Our subject for today is how to be a beatnik. Some people think a beatnik is merely a bum with sunglasses, but he is more than that. Though not much. The first step in becoming a beatnik is to grow a beard. This can be a long process, particularly if you're a girl. Clothing-wise, we should remember this important rule. The well-dressed beatnik is seldom neatnik. Beatniks hang out in unemployment lines, health food stores, but most of all in coffee houses. Beatnik joints have lots of atmosphere, but it's usually too dark to see it.
Coffee, tea, or goat's milk?
Coffee, I guess.
Coffee we got. What kind?
See, espresso 75 cents, cappuccino 85, Sanko 50, refill 25. Think I'll have some of that there refill.
Why don't you try Cafe Minuto?
Cafe Minuto, what's that?
Instant coffee. Special for you, I make with dirty water. How is?
Terrible!
Good. Should taste bad to last drop.
The beatnik is often fond of reading poetry to jazz. Thusly, Mary had a swinging lamb. He followed her to school. She hopped his wool for a bongo drum, and man, that lamb was cool.
Thank you, Mr. Know-It-All.
And now...
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Know-It-All, for that. It gives you a sense of the kind of atmosphere I want to set for today as I introduce today's speaker, Laury Hammel of the Sustainable Business Network in Boston. For those of you who haven't been here before, the structure of what we do over the next hour is I invite our guest speaker, in this case, Laury Hammel, to share some innovations for 25 minutes. And then we have a discussion, and everyone is invited to unmute themselves and participate in that. And we've saved a few minutes at the end if anyone wants to share any announcements or brags or anything else. So a little bit about Laury Hammel, which all of you know, but it's good for people who maybe are watching this recording to know. He is the co-founder of many things. He co-founded businesses for social responsibility. In the 90s, he helped co-found the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies in the early 2000s. He then co-founded the Sustainable Business Network of Boston in 1988. And he also is the CEO, president, and largely chief spokesperson for the Longfellow Health Clubs, which are going gangbusters in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and even in Utah. They have 12,000 members. They've been around for 51 years, which is almost as old as I am. And finally, I want to say that Laury is the president of Amoeba. And I do want to say one final thing, and that is when my son first met Laury, and he was 2, that is, my son was 2 and Laury was whatever, my son said, that guy looks like a giraffe. So I, with great affection, welcome Mr. Giraffe to share some of his insights.
Well, that's that double introduction from Mr. Know-It-All, and I'm glad you didn't say that you thought I was a know-it-all. You know, I'm glad you didn't say that. But I do. It was great to see you, old Bullwinkle. But my only question was, what was the language that was on the script? Was that Russian?
It was make-believe Russian. Yeah, because it was all Bullwinkle was responsible for settling the Cold War in the end.
I got you. I got you. Anyway, thank you for the great introduction. And it's good to be here. And nice to see you, Kathy and Gabby and DW. It's been a while since we've talked. Good to see you. And for all those people who are going to be watching this at on your own time and on your home, welcome. So what I wanted to do today was to talk about talk about what it would be like to found or grow a independent business alliance. And we used to call those in Bali a local network. But how do you succeed, and how do you bring in the revenue, and how do you create the activity and the bandwidth to be able to do things that would help grow local economies? And that's a challenge that people have been asking. We've been asking since Michael and I founded Bali back in 2001, and Jennifer and Jeff founded Amoeba back in 2001. And so what I wanted to talk about was some ways in which are sort of new ways of raising funds for independent business alliances. And the first one's not that new, but it's was pretty rare at the beginning, and that is around producing local food programs. And about 12 years ago, Nicole Williams and I, who's one of the board members of SBN, founded the Boston Local Food Festival to begin our local food program committee. And in the process, we ended up talking to the statewide agricultural department called AMDAR, and asked them to help fund us. And after the first year, we ran the festival. And after the first year, we asked to be funded. And they said, okay, we'll see, we'll consider you. And they had a $500,000 grant available, and they gave us $5,000. So we were like, well, that really doesn't do much for the festival, because our festival had 50,000 people in attendance. So we had a meeting with them and explained to them what we were about, and they'd never heard of us before. But over time, this festival now, we had about 60,000 people here this year. It was just an incredible event with 80 vendors, beautiful day. Just all of the companies were locally owned, independent companies. The food was wonderful. It was very diverse. The food was from all nationalities, really. And it was a beautiful example of how life could be. And that's one of the programs we run. And of course, that was one of the first events that Gabby was a participant in, because she's a relatively new staff member. And but that's only one of the programs we run. We also run what we used to call an Eat Local Month, and now we call it Eat Local Always. And then we run a local food trade show. And we have been able to, and we have other programs we've run as well, but we've been able to attract funding from the State Agricultural Agency, MDAR, and from the USDA and other government organizations, because local food is becoming a more and more popular item for people to get behind, and including the federal government, and to support local agriculture and fisheries, and also do work on local food producers. So one of the things that's did also is that we now have about 40 members that are local food businesses. And those members are very active and participate in our programs. And so the local food programs we run have been very, very successful, have been the major way of funding SBN for over 10 years. And I know that I've talked with other groups about working with local food, other IBAs, independent business alliances. And some feel that there's already too many local food organizations anyway. Some feel they don't have the expertise. Maybe some feel the state is not friendly or could be more friendly. But there could be many reasons why not to do it. But there are a lot of nonprofits who are doing a lot of great work on promoting local food and getting funded from a variety of sources. So that's sort of story number one that I wanted to put out there. So do we want to have questions after I make the whole thing, or do it one at a time, Michael?
Why don't you just continue for 20-ish, 25 minutes, and then we can open it up.
Well, my next part won't take that long. I'd rather have Q&A. But the other thing, we're doing two other programs that we can share with you. One is that because of the incredible violence that has been for so many years taken against Black people, and particularly Black people, from police and other institutional racism, there, with the Floyd murder, that there's been a huge uptake in supporting racial equity. And for example, in the city of Boston, this is not exactly the right numbers, but it's very close. The average equity that a family has in their family, their average net worth, if for a normal, just regular person in Boston, is around $300,000, and the average net worth of a Black person in Boston is about $10. So, I mean, the discrepancy economically between Black people and white people, or and other types of people, but particularly Black people, is so huge that more and more businesses and government agencies and nonprofits and foundations are working to help create programs that would make it a more inclusive, more just, more fair, more diverse, and more equitable society and economy. And one thing that we've been doing, we founded a group called the Cambridge Somerville Black Business Network. And Nicola Williams, who's a Black woman leader in the local food movement, not only locally, but nationally, she founded this group as a project under SBN. And as a result, we've got about 50 members, and these members are startup businesses. They've maybe been around 2 or 3 years. Maybe some of them are just now beginning, that they're just emerging into be a Black-owned business. But going back, just take a step back, when we were trying to organize the social venture network to bring in more BIPOC business owners many years ago, and I say many years ago, like 15 years ago, it was a really big challenge because there weren't that many Black-owned businesses around. So for us to be able to find people and bring them to the conference was always a challenge. So the reality is there are not that many Black-owned businesses, and one of the things people are doing is trying to help create and nurture and sustain Black entrepreneurs. So we ended up applying for some ARPA funds, which is the American Rescue Plan funds from Cambridge, and applying for a fund from Cambridge Savings Bank, which is very, very big into trying to diversify the local economy and make it more inclusive and more equitable. And we applied for a grant from the city of Cambridge, and we got accepted for $1,030,000 to help fund Black businesses. And we're going to be taking a portion of that to run this program, but by far the majority of this money is going to be going directly in the hands of Black business owners, so they can help nurture and grow and sustain their business. We also got a $100,000 grant from the Cambridge Savings Bank, and we're doing the same thing with them. So here we have a program that is right up our alley, that has brought in more Black-owned businesses into our membership and brought in more funds, so we can do the work we're doing and enable us to accomplish our mission, which is to create, our mission of SBN is to create a local economy that's strong and sustainable and fair and equitable. So that's enabled us to do a lot of great work around our mission, and to enable us to have a much bigger impact on the world. And we couldn't be happier about this fact. Now, the third program I want to talk about is related to around what's normally the term people use for sustainability, with, in a narrow sense, environmental sustainability. I am right now at a workshop in Worcester, and that's why I'm in this room by myself. This was I commandeered, and in that workshop, it's all about workforce development to try to support the growth of clean energy, and it's being all these are being funded. This effort's being funded by millions of dollars by the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, and we've received our second grant from them. And what we've been doing is organizing solar energy companies to promote more solar energy, because our goal in the state of Massachusetts to be 50% renewable by 2030, which is probably going to be impossible, but it'll never happen without more solar energy. So we're organizing and supporting solar energy companies, and there's plenty of them. Right now, coincidentally enough, today, they're in the second day of putting the panels on my Natick tennis club. That's going to be, we've transferred all of our heating and air conditioning to heat pumps. And now the solar energy will cover all of the energy we need for that building, which will make it a net zero carbon emission building. So we're organizing solar energy companies, and they're in desperate need of staff members. So what we're doing is we're working with a number of groups to try to, and this is what this is about here, workforce development groups to find, identify, train qualified people to work in solar energy companies who desperately need employees. So those are three areas where we've been able to obtain a very large dollar volume of grants that enabled us to have a big impact to accomplish our mission, and at the same time be able to hire the staff members to service the needs of our members and to promote the mission of creating a local economy that's local, green, and fair. So that's sort of a summary of three basic programs, which I think couldn't be happier about and thrilled about. And it's similar a little bit to, except a much smaller scale, to what Local First Arizona is doing, because they're doing things very similar to this, although much bigger and much broader. And Moosey over here knows all about that and could tell that story many times. So those are the three programs I wanted to share, and I'm open for comments and questions that people might have about those programs, or anything to do with the Sustainable Business Network of Massachusetts. So thank you for listening.
All right. Well, while folks are formulating their questions, let me ask one immediately of Dr. Hammel here, and that is, in this support network for Black businesses, what are some of the specific ways that you see as giving the greatest amount of support? Is it finance? Is it technical assistance? Is it mentorship? Is it partnership? What do you see?
Well, you're as I would definitely expect, you understand the business we're talking about here, because you know, the very first thing, I as an entrepreneur who started my business with $333 of my own money, I know what it's like to need capital and to need people to invest in you. And I've spent most of my business life at 51 years, most of it raising money, other people's money, to build my program, build my company. But the first thing that entrepreneurs ask for is money. That's what they need. And if you don't have money available for any entrepreneur, but particularly Black entrepreneurs, you may not really get the involvement you may want, because as much as they need technical assistance, they may not be to survive the next month, the next 6 weeks, next 6 months, or the next year without some investment in what they're doing. So, but what we're doing is actually doing both. I mean, the two main things is that you do give people money, and of course, in the old days when they were funding these .coms and they were giving people millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then they destroyed the company because they didn't know how to use it, and they ended up not being able to do what they thought they could do, and it was just way too much money can ruin a company. That's for sure, without technical assistance. But even small amounts of money can be wasted if there's not the right technical assistance. So we are providing and offering grants for technical assistance primarily. However, we're also doing grants for other items. For example, if they need a down payment for a piece of a property they're trying to lease or rent, and they need that, we might be funding that. We might be funding problems they had because of COVID. So we're doing smaller grants between 10,000 or maybe even 5,000 and 50,000, maybe a couple of bigger ones. But we're trying to reach a number of people, and we're really, in terms of, you mentioned, so that's yes to technical assistance, yes to funding, and also yes to mentorship. And we haven't yet got into that yet, because mentorship is a lot easier said than done, because it's a lot of work to mentor somebody, and it takes a lot of effort to find a person who is capable of mentoring somebody, but has the time and the time and the willingness to do it. But we would like to we're doing some mentorship always, but in terms of having a full mentor program, we doubt we can do that, but we always provide mentorship to help support people through our programs and our workshops.
Great. So other comments, questions, ideas from folks? Leslie, DW, Kathy?
Well, I had a question. What's your general operating budget for your organization?
Yes, it varies from year to year, but this year will be around $300,000.
And I guess my next question would be, how much staff do you have?
Right. Well, we do cheat. We do cheat a little bit on that, and that is that I'm the executive director of SBN and have been for many years, and I'm pro bono. So we don't. I've never taken money from any of the organizations I've been involved with, except my business. So that saves us a lot of money, because the executive director position is one that's very hard to fill and very expensive. So we have me, who's about the third time, sometimes a half time. And then we have a local food program manager who is runs the whole local food programs. We have a local food program coordinator, and that was Gabby, who had to leave to go to another meeting. And that's two. And then we have a third employee who is focusing on environmental sustainability, membership, and our annual Sustainable Business Year of the Year Awards program, and miscellaneous. That's a third staff member. And then we have a half-time staff member that does a lot of fill-in and does utility work. So that's 3.5 paid people plus me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Laury, one thing that I wanted to also ask about is on the food program, particularly the big event you do every year. I know that's a significant revenue generator, and maybe just talk about the economics of that and how that has changed over the years.
Yes, well, we wouldn't, one of the things we brag about, and when we brag about it, we probably pay the price a lot, but not every year, but one way or another, we let Whole Foods come into our local food trade show because we want them to buy from our local vendors. But that's that's our B2B event, where you've got, people who are restaurants, grocery stores, whatever, coming in and purchasing from local food producers and farmers. That's B2B. But when we have the B2C event, which is the festival, Whole Foods has asked us many, many times if they could sponsor it. And they've put in big money when they do sponsorships. And they would have gotten a lot of benefit from it, but we refuse to do that because this is all locally owned businesses. Every single company on that 80 those 80 tents, they're all locally owned independent businesses. And there's only so much we can charge them. And the tents themselves cost $150 to put up. But for the most part, a couple of them we have delivered, donated to use. But so we get most of it, probably out of the budget, which is like $110,000, probably 60 of it comes from the government, MDAR. And they love our event because it's such an unbelievably beautiful event, and they're happy to do that. And the remaining 50, it comes from sponsorships from local businesses, and it may from $500 to $5,000 and foundations. And then we get a lot of significant amount of money from vendors who are paying between $300 and $800 a piece based on what kind of type of tent and what kind of services they require. So we don't really make that much money off the festival. We probably make, $5,000 to $10,000 a year net after paying staff, and also paying some contractors, many contractors. But the benefit to us goes far beyond that $5,000 or $10,000, because in these grants, you include things like overhead, like indirect costs. So they end up paying for a portion of the ongoing expenses you need to have to run a nonprofit. So even though, we're putting in, X amount of dollars for staff time, there's indirect costs and fringe benefits that you can add in there, which enables us to keep this organization going. And that's similar with the other programs. None of these programs are making, huge amounts of money, but they do allow us to have a staff and to take a leadership role and to make a huge difference in the local food system, which we've done. I mean, we've made a huge impact, and we've got other thing. We brought in a lot of members. And by the way, you'll be happy to hear this, Michael. We went like a lot of people to the monthly dues route for dues. And because if you have an annual dues, the problem you have is that every single year you got to make a case for people to renew. So it's the opt-in strategy. And if you're in the health club business, when we changed to monthly EFT, which is the opt-out strategy, that made a huge difference in terms of how we do our business, and was a hugely important step. And for our membership, if the lowest level of membership based on income, if your income is under, I think, $200,000 or $100,000, it's only $10 a month, which is $120 a year. That gives some money to us. And we have about 50 of those members who are paying $10 a month, and we have a lot of other members who are paying 20 and 40 and 60. But it's great to have these people be members, be connected to us, contribute. It's unpainful for them. They end up getting discounts for the various programs. So when you run successful programs, there is a multiplier effect in going on, because the advertising, the marketing, the goodwill, the connections, it's huge.
So the number of businesses that you have as paying members now is how many?
Well, we have around 100 members, and then we have another affiliate of about another 50. So we have about 150 members right now. And those members, that number is a very low number for most successful IBAs, both in terms of numbers and in terms of revenue. And one of the reasons for that is that we haven't been able to really, we organized a lot of local first networks in Massachusetts, which were very successful for a long time, but they ended up failing because they didn't have enough revenue to keep it going. But since Massachusetts is a statewide organization, it's been really hard for us to be able to bring together a critical mass of businesses who would be supporting us at a level we would like, unlike several others who are in fact, if you're in a smaller community like Bellingham, Washington, or Louisville, Kentucky, or Grand Rapids, there's a really big sense of community and supporting the businesses. And in Boston, Boston itself is just way too big to have that kind of local flavor, unfortunately. And Cambridge is doing well, but we have a local organization we work with that we founded called Cambridge Local First. So it's a lower number of members, but a big impact.
Got it. All right. Other questions, comments? DW. We cannot hear you, though. It shows you being unmuted, but we're not hearing you. Perhaps you want to type in something in the chat. All right. So, Laury, while DW is typing that in, quick follow-on question, which is, so as you are, given the constraints that you're talking about with the local networks, what strategies have been the best ones for bringing new members into the fold?
Right. Well, one is it's actually developing programs that meet the needs of businesses.
Yeah.
And local food the program has been spectacular, and consequently, we have a large number of local food businesses. We're now doing the same thing with solar energy and getting members from there. And then we do a Sustainable Business of the Year program. And a lot of people like that we're setting examples of what it's like to be a socially responsible company that's local, green, and fair. And they like being associated with a group like that. So those are the strategies we're using, and they have worked. And it's one of the things that we also run an annual conference every year that brings in really good speakers, and that's actually been a source of membership as well as a source of revenue. So that's another way of doing it. And one of the reasons we don't have more members actually is because most of the money we have, we spend on programs, and we don't really have what you'd call a capacity building fund where we could hire somebody to go out and do membership recruitment. So, but I do think it's a difficult thing to do in an urban area, a large urban area. I think that Phoenix and Tucson did it. I mean, and Arizona did it. But I think middle-sized cities have a better chance of making these things work than like New York or Chicago. Chicago, as a whole, never did it very well. But Andersonville is a member of
right.
And but they have a really strong chamber of commerce there. And by the way, I do want to mention that we have Amoeba has 9 programs that are related to choosing indie local. And we do promotional programs on all 9 of those at SBN. And we're maybe we didn't do the art one, but we've done all the rest. And we're getting ready and gearing up for the Shop Indie local program during the holiday season. So we do all those too, and they do bring in members too. That's true.
Right. Okay. So DW, we still don't see your comment. Oh, here we go. Local food, a grocery co-op has been trying to start up in Long Beach, has about 400 members, but so far has failed, and the founder moved to Spain. So the board is fine, needs more energy. Any ideas?
Well, let's see. The Cambridge Food Co-op, which had been here for flippin' ever, was unable to make it because they first of all, they were competing with the Whole Foods literally a block away. And so they were trying to serve more the needs of low-income people and people who give lower prices, but they were never able to make it into a going concern. And they finally went out of business, as sad as that was. That being said, a few years back at a conference we held in Boston, we brought in one of the most successful local food co-ops from, I think it's Raleigh, North Carolina. Do you remember that program, Michael?
Yeah, from Research Triangle, Weaver Street Market.
Yeah, and they're incredible, and they have an incredibly successful food co-op. And of course, I guess I should turn this question over to a staff member of a very successful local food co-op. So Jen, tell us about how the food co-op in Monadnock is successful.
Well, I actually, when I read DW's question, I could relate because before we started the Monadnock Food Co-op in Keene, New Hampshire, we were trying to start a food co-op in Peterborough, New Hampshire, which is about a 15-mile commute. And our founder and his wife moved to South America. And we also, the reason why we were really, why we were galvanized is because there was a building that was for sale. So it was like we had the potential building, we had this person who was willing to be that founder or that person who would step into the general manager role. And the founder left. The building went into foreclosure because we didn't have the money yet to buy it. And we were like, just kind of defeated. But not too long after, we got connected with a group of people that were doing the same thing in another city. So eventually we all found each other, and our local economic development corporation wanted us to succeed. So they made it so that the building that they have basically built for us, it just kind of everything started to come together. But it was a long convoluted process that everyone kind of looks back on and goes, wow, that was so easy to start a food co-op. But those kind of things like you're experiencing happens. But just keep on going, finding those allies. And then, yeah, I think it took us 8 years before we opened. But now we are super, super successful. We expanded just 2 years ago, and we're talking about having a satellite in that same community that we were originally trying to start a food co-op in. So it's a long, strange trip.
And then 2 other examples. In Western Mass, there's an incredibly successful local food co-op there. That's just unbelievably beautiful and successful and huge. Have you been to that one, Jen? It's great. And there's how about the one in Vermont? Have you been to the Vermont one what's the name of that city?
Talking about the Brattleboro, there's lots of them in Vermont. Yeah,
there's a lot of good success. So
yep.
So anyway, yeah, there's been some very successful ones, and I think that the successful ones I know about have found somebody who's willing to be a social entrepreneur, who really wants to take it and take the lead and make it happen. And maybe it's more than one person, but you need somebody to take the lead and really put their life into it, and who's willing, and obviously who's got the ability to raise money to start because it's a business. A food co-op is a business, no question. And the difference between making a successful business is not much different than making a successful co-op, because in fact, it's a food business.
And I think there's a need for critical mass to get started, and 400 members is okay, but I'm guessing that when you look at other food co-ops, the critical mass may need to be higher to get started. And I also know that the co-op, the sort of various national co-op associations have loan programs for getting co-ops started that have gotten a critical mass of members together. So that probably also is pretty important.
Jen, how
But-
many members do you have there, Jen?
We're got about 4,500, but our critical number was 1,000 before we could really talk about having a member loan campaign or anything like that. So yeah,
That's good to know.
Took us a while to get there, but there are, like Michael and Laurie already alluded to, there are tons of resources out there that weren't around 15 years ago. So I'm sure you're tapped into some of them already, but definitely reach out if there are others that we can connect you to.
Well, I guess the related question is, that's a heavy lift, but it's something that's been going on for enough years that there's inertia there. And thankfully, the founder who went to Spain didn't also take the contents of the bank account. So that's so it can move forward.
That's good news. That's good news.
Yeah, but Laurie talked about more event-driven and partnership-driven food programming, as opposed to a capital-intensive grocery store, basically. It seems like just the element of food can attract some interest in investment and possibly USDA grants. But I'm curious if there's any crossover between the two, or one that's better than the other.
Between the two, meaning what? Sorry.
Well, more the event approach, the programming approach that you described for ESPN versus a co-op centric approach.
Right. Well, co-ops are really like separate independent businesses, and there's almost none of them are actually connected to a independent local business alliance. They're just so focused on local food and that business, and they're friendly. And we gave, the food co-op in Western Mass got the Sustainable Business of the Year award from us, and they were thrilled, and they came and got the award, and we were thrilled because they were such a great example of a great business. But that's not really that it is a nonprofit, but that's a lifelong ambition by itself. There's really not, it doesn't really look at the bigger picture. So for me, the reality is that there was, and of course, if you talk to anybody who was successful at IBA, they will all tell you that you need to have an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur leading an IBA, because it's just it requires so much passion, so much energy, and so much time. So if you found the right entrepreneur, as Jen said, there's a really good chance you can make that food co-op work. If you found the right entrepreneur, you can actually, a local food festival could be run and should be run in every community in America. There's so many great vendors producing so much good food, and they have farmers markets, which is nice. I think those are great. But to have a festival that lasts all day long and brings people from all over the area, and it's in a location that's very exciting. And then same with local food trade shows. Those are events that are needed in the food system, and make a big difference and can provide some funding for an organization to do something like that. But it's really a different thing than a food co-op. Food co-op's a completely different animal, in my opinion. Not that they're not related, but I mean, and I'm so impressed with the leaders of the food co-ops who have done some incredible work. I mean, because the one in the Triangle in North Carolina is like right next door to a Whole Foods. I mean, they're right around the corner.
Right.
And they're crushing it, you know. And when you hear something like that, you know, it's like, you may have heard the story in Italy where the 400-year pizzeria put McDonald's out of business. You know, they couldn't, no one would go to McDonald's, they'd all go to the pizzeria. Occasionally you have those Davids being the Goliaths, and we all love it when that happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think the tricky thing is what, you know, how can you engage members richly and in a big way? So one way is getting them to invest in a building. That's I think a strategy that some co-ops have given. Another is like the Park Slope Co-op, where everyone has a little bit of a work detail, and that gets people involved and tends to bring down prices, and that's good. And then the third is, you know, is there a patronage payment at the end that's really an incentive for people? So, but if you know, I think you can and should start doing whatever in the basement somewhere, maybe with just a limited number of foodstuffs, and then, you know, start as small as possible and then break out at some point. Kathy, we haven't heard much from you. Other thoughts from you?
About building membership? Is that
any of the above?
Well, I'm new to the board, but very old to nonprofit work, and that's why I'm on the board, because everybody on this board is an entrepreneur, not steeped in nonprofit at all. And they've been very clever. They have been using ARPA dollars. They keep, I don't know how, in our area, ARPA dollars were not getting spent at all. And so they have hooked into grants through Department of Commerce with the state of Washington. And they just recently completed $1 million grant where they offered money for marketing, but you had to be a member of SIMBA. So that built quite a bit of membership quickly, and they successfully were able to direct that money out for marketing, which I have to be really honest, I run a small art gallery, and marketing money is really the one thing you're really looking for. So it was very successful. And now they just recently got more ARPA dollars through the city of Spokane, because adding new members, they gave them technical assistance on how to apply for grants through the city of Spokane. So they do a lot of that kind of work to stimulate membership. I don't know the total number of members they even have. I was just on the web going, I just texted somebody and said, hey, what is your total membership? I like your idea of the monthly, because their yearly it's a bite. So I'm going to talk to them about that concept. I think that's a great idea. It doesn't seem as, and plus when you do it where you sign them up and then they forget they even have a membership, you're collecting that money. So that seemed like a good approach.
And by the way,
we're not into the food at all here, because we have such strong farm to table in the city of, you know, with entrepreneurs in Spokane. Farm to table has been out for 10 years. They have their own group. One of them is a member of SIMBA, but we wouldn't even get near that food thing. And sustainable, mainly what we've worked with is the what I call the BIPOC community, not just the Black community, and LGBTQT. And that's where they're really picking up their membership. And the arts. The arts is an area that nobody seems to want to think about too much, but it's many times one artist trying to run a business. So trying to give them technical assistance on setup and moving forward. So I think they're doing now that I'm listening to this, I think they're moving forward. We have a right-sized city. Spokane only has a population of less than 400,000. And when you mentioned Bellingham, I'd say the difference between Spokane and Bellingham is Spokane is poverty. Bellingham is very, very wealthy. It's part of that I-5 corridor that just takes in the bucks. So, we're really, and they're expanding out into small towns in our rural areas. So now they have expanded down into the Pullman area, which is 100 miles out of here in the Palouse. And so I don't know what else to say, but this has been helpful in terms of that membership thing. I definitely picked up on that.
Well, I'm thrilled you say that. And let me just add another thing is that running health clubs, our memberships are between like $75 a month and $100 a month. No, $200 a month. And so, and usually people don't forget that, although it's happened a couple of times. They come say, well, I've been paying for 2 years and I've used the club. I want a refund. I'm like, well, we'll split it with you, kiddo, because we didn't know. But the reason I'm bringing that up is that what happens, I think, with these $10 a month situations is that they may forget and they look and see on their bill, oh, SBN. They say, of course I want to put in $10 for SBN. Why not? And it's just a pain in the butt to take it off, right?
Right.
They don't want to call up and say, I want to quit. And so they're like, I want to support them. That's good. And then they'll forget about it and they'll come to an event and they'll go, I'm glad I did it. And but to get someone to put down $120 on a decision when they making a payroll, they got this or that or the other, it's a much different sale, and you got to call them 5 times.
No.
And we don't make calls anymore. I mean, we got very, very few calls because we have a few people pay in advance, but it's a game changer, and it's good for relationship building because it's a way for them to make a small contribution to us. I mean, obviously it's bigger if they're a bigger company, but on a monthly basis, and they feel good about it, So I think it's a great thing for all the reasons you say, even though, some people do forget about it, but that's rare from my experience. Not that they don't forget sometimes, but they don't forget about it for 5 years. They check it out and they say, oh yeah, I'll keep it. So I was thrilled to see how many we had when I looked at that list the other day. So anyway, well, we're getting close to the end, and I know that we have a time policewoman, and she wants to end all meetings exactly on time. So we got 5 minutes left. So anyway, so I'm glad you found that helpful, Kathy, and thanks for being on the call. And DW, how did you find it?
Oh, yeah, good. And we won a USDA grant about 1.5 years ago, and it was interesting to see kind of the metrics for success. And so going back again, this helped to give some new ideas.
Right.
All right. Well, listen, Laury, thank you very much for coming. A round of applause, a moose call. And thanks to the rest of you for coming. And we will let you know when the next Moose's Corner is. It may not be until the beginning of the year, but we got plenty of other people to share plenty of other ideas. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks, Moose. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.